no idea. I wasn't sober at the time. It was, as everything else was kind of strange, but when we went there up north to shoot the pilot, David had instructed me when I interviewed for him for the job. I had just come off a Michael Mann show called Crime Story, and it was a lot of long lens and stuff. And he said, he looked at me and he said, do you have anything warm? I said, warm? He said, yeah, do you have any images that are warm? Because all of my footage and my demo reels was kind of cool. It was the thing of the time. It was a lot of not very Technicolor-ish. And I had just finished a show that was in daily, so it was about World War II, so I went and got that and brought it back to him. And it had a yellow warm cast to it. I said, yeah, that's good, okay. And that was it. I went, well, I don't think I had the show. And he called me up and I got the show. And when we went out there with David Lant was the line producer, and Patty, she was incredible. And we were just kind of listening to what David had kind of, with the actors, he treated us the same way. He just kind of let you find your way and listen to him, and he would just give kind of, well, maybe the photography should be just a little warmer. And I was in the woods. It was green. I wanted blue and green and all that kind of stuff in the forest. And he would say, he would just kind of softly, and with Patty, with her production design and wardrobe, I think, at the same time. And stay in budget with David Lant, we just came up with this look, and I was kind of like hypnotized by the whole production. I had no idea what I was doing, and David kept saying, "Well, just make it warmer," and we put these filters on. The lab up north would say, I can't print it that warm. It's just we're going to be laughed out of town. And I said, no, make it. Just add this filter. I put this filter in, add it, and he said, okay. And I screened it for David and Patty, and they went perfect. I thought I was never going to work again in this town. and it added all this, people seeing the forest with this warm tones in the shadow area seemed to be what David wanted, and it worked.
And that was the famed coral filter. And
yeah, well, it was actually, it wound up, I was shooting Fuji at the time, and David wanted a certain warmth, a certain color of it. I couldn't quite get with a coral, and I talked to the film rep at Fuji. I said, how do I get this? I want a yellow. I want a yellow in the orange and the warmth. And he said, double the 85 filter. So I put two 85s in. I was using an 85 filter, and for those who are understanding camera, it's a color correction for daylight film. And to correct it, you put in an 85 filter to make it tungsten and to compensate for the blue. And then I added a thing called an LLD, which was another 85, but it was clear, so I didn't lose the stuff. And that somehow wound up that color.
And it was not easy because David wanted that color all the way through the show, and ABC kept kicking it back because it was so red. The skin tones and everything, you guys just saw that tone, that we had to send somebody, when they broadcast that the first time, to be in the control room and monitor so they wouldn't dial that thing down and ruin whatever that was that, you know, they all created, David loved.
And they had someone there planning to do that.
Mark, I'm curious to know how you guys divided the writing. Was it were you working together? Did you guys do scenes and then bring it together?
When we've worked together, we've always been in the room together working. We wrote the pilot, I think, who had the writing credit on the second episode? Was it the two of us, or just, was it, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we wrote the first 4 hours together, and then at that point I started bringing in the guys I'd selected to be on the staff. But David and I worked out all the stories through the first season, and then he said he was making Wild at Heart. So I would send him drafts once we were done, and he'd give me back notes, and we'd go back and forth that way. The first year.
Were there particular characters that you found harder to write, or that you found that you were able to write better? I mean, who wrote the dialogue for Don Davis? His speech in that third episode is fantastic.
Yeah, I wrote a lot of Don's stuff. I mean, again, anything that you see in these hours are things that we sat down and hammered out together. And that gave us the template. I had Don's voice in my head, the character of Major Briggs. So I remember writing a lot of his stuff as we moved along. And I had Cooper in my head. He just kind of, it was like turning on a spigot. I knew what he sounded like. But again, the two of us sitting together for all those months with that long gap, finding all the voices. And then, everybody was different. It was, writing for Sarah was, it was like Tosca. It was tragedy. We were hitting those high notes. Ben and Jerry, it was like Hope and Crosby, so that you had a really wide variety of tone within the hour. But that was what made it fun. I think what made it fun for people is that, look, when you've got a town this size, everything isn't homogenous. They all have their own voices. They all have their own quirks. And if you've ever lived in a small town, it's every bit as weird as this place is. So.
And Twin Peaks had a pace to it. And when I did the first episode, I think my script was about 70 some odd pages long. And by the time we figured out the formula, what worked for the pace of the story, the others got down to about 34 pages. Seemed to be ideal.
Yeah. We ended up cutting a couple scenes.
Oh, a lot
from yours that because we hadn't played with that length yet. And Duwayne had also established a great tempo with David on the pilot, and that was really the kind of pace we kept throughout the entire series.
Did the writing evolve around some of the actors that you cast?
Well, yeah. I mean, you make adjustments once you've found the right people. And it's funny. We never, as she said, we never actually read anybody. We just sat in a room and talked to everybody that came in, and then we just would know. One of the best stories was we were looking to cast Ben Horn, and Joanna Ray, who you'll meet later on, I guess, in your series, had suggested her old friend Richard Bamer, and I hadn't honestly heard of Richard in almost 25 years. He'd been a big star in the 60s, and I'd been a big fan of his, and he was fantastic when we met him. He's a wonderful man, very urbane, great person to have around. And then she said, and I want you to meet Russ Tamblyn. And we didn't have a part for him at that point. But it was just so cool when Russ Tamblyn came in, and we went, West Side Story. I mean, you got it. So that's how Dr. Jacoby was born. And it was just a thrill to see the two of them together again.
So without giving much away, I'm curious about the ways in which, Grace, you come in and out of the series. And it's there's a phenomenal scene in the very finale, which I love. Talk about that character in terms of, both of you, how and when to bring in Sarah into the story.
Well, it was about, in a way, it's like you've got an orchestra, and when you need a certain sound, you bring that character back. And as we were coming up to reaching that crescendo, we couldn't do it without Grace. We needed that back and her back as a presence in the story. So, we came up with that passage, which you're not supposed to talk about yet. But, as usual, she was extraordinary. And So that was the sense you had with this group of characters. To work with a cast that big, I think we had 35 regulars.
Oh, it's ridiculous. When I read the script the first time, and David said, "What do you think?" I said, "I think I need a glossary to know who everybody is." This is an enormous number of characters.
Well, it was why we took so much trouble with casting, because we knew these people had to be indelible, and you had to get to know them in very short bursts of screen time. So they had to really make an impression on you. And I'd say if you're here 20 some odd years later, that it kind of worked.
Yeah.
It's startling to me how much more readily I think, you get to know all the characters on this series than you do most series. You know, it takes a while, usually longer, quite a bit longer.
Well, there was something about having the extreme emotional atmosphere of an event like this that shatters a small town sense of self, so that you could bring all these people on stage and in very quick terms, by showing what their reactions were to this event, you immediately got a handle on who they were, and then bringing them back, and also we got to talk about Angela's brilliant music, because almost everybody had their own theme, so there were even subconscious cues that you were going to see somebody again when you brought these people back. So there was no confusion. I mean, it was never reported to us that people couldn't tell who was who and what was going on, and that was kind of an amazing thing to hear.
Well, Duwayne was actually telling me a little bit about how Angela worked moving forward from the pilot to the actual series episodes, and I was hoping you could maybe share that again.
Well, and the music is extraordinary, and it actually makes my editing look really good, but that's what good music can do. What we had the music from the pilot, and then I think it was Mark. We got, as directors, individual directors, could choose one scene and ask Angelo to compose an original piece for the one scene per episode. So we would do that, but then the rest of the music in the entire episode was made up of little loops that we made up and broke Angelo's music down. So you would have, the sax over here, and you'd have the snare drum over, and every director was given a cassette tape. That was pretty new at the time. And you would just listen to this on your drive in and home at night, and you'd just listen to the music in these individual tracks. And then we got to sort of be like our own composers. We would go into the box and just take these things out and play them. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, all these different instruments, and that's how the music was ultimately composed.
And then occasionally you could also ask for a variation on a theme. I mean, I remember in the one I directed at the end of the first season, I wanted it was a scene for Nadine, and I wanted a harp version of the theme. So he had a great music editor who could take the basic architecture of the cue and then just reconfigure it to an instrument. So we had a great flexibility with the library that he built, and it was a great asset.
And by the way, Angelo was working out of New York.
Right.
And we were here.
Mark,